I told him I knew a few guys that wanted to treat him to free pool and drinks, huh?
Throughout the 1970s, Happy Days was the undisputed king of primetime television, capturing the hearts of millions with its rock and roll vision of 1950s America. Audiences couldn't get enough of the Cunningham family and the effortless cool of the Fonz. Yet, even the most beloved sitcom empires eventually lose their cool. For this iconic series, a single wildly absurd stunt completely shattered its realistic charm, alienating loyal fans and ultimately causing the entire show to pack up for good. So, what infamous scene took Happy Days off the air? Join us as we look closer at the spectacular television disaster that changed pop culture history forever. From rejected pilot to TV empire, the untold story of Happy Days. Long before it became a household name, Happy Days actually started as a total failure. In 1972, television executive Gary Marshall pitched a pilot called Love and the Television Set. ABC passed on the project, dumping it into an anthology show called Love, American Style, just to get rid of it. The story should have ended right there, but Hollywood works in mysterious ways. A visionary young director named George Lucas happened to see that rejected episode. He loved the lead actor, a fresh-faced kid named Ron Howard, and immediately cast him as the star of his 1973 nostalgic masterpiece film, American Graffiti. When American Graffiti became a massive box office sensation, ABC executives realized they had made a terrible mistake. Desperate to cash in on the sudden 1950s nostalgia craze, they sprinted back to Gary Marshall, revived his dead pilot, and officially launched Happy Days in January 1974. At first, the series focused entirely on the innocent, Midwestern adolescence of Richie Cunningham, his best friends Potsy and Ralph, and his lovable parents, Howard and Marion. The first season even featured an older brother named Chuck, who famously went upstairs in Season 2 and completely vanished from existence without a single explanation. But while the show aimed for a realistic, wistful look at teenage life in Milwaukee, the ratings quickly began to slide. The safe, wholesome formula wasn't working, and the series was facing cancellation yet again. That is when Gary Marshall made a radical gamble that changed television forever. He decided to ditch the serious drama, lean into broad comedy, and shine a massive spotlight on a minor background character. A high school dropout, motorcycle mechanic, and smooth-talking greaser named Fonzie. The network was originally terrified of Fonzie, fearing his leather jacket made him look like a dangerous criminal. They only allowed him to wear it if his motorcycle was in the scene, forcing the writers to constantly place him next to his bike. But viewers absolutely lost their minds for Henry Winkler's charismatic performance. By 1976, Happy Days soared to the #1 spot on television. Fonzie became a global marketing phenomenon, his face plastered on everything from lunchboxes to posters, and his original leather jacket eventually earned a permanent home in the Smithsonian Institution. The Happy Days universe became so massive that it birthed an entire television empire. It spawned legendary smash hit spin-offs like Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy, which introduced the world to Robin Williams. Even when Ron Howard left the show in later seasons, the series adapted, making Fonzie the central figure and introducing his young cousin, Chachi, to keep the magic alive. Defying all odds, the show survived for 11 glorious seasons and 255 episodes, proving that a little bit of cool can take you a very long way. The hilarious reason. Happy Days almost had a different name. Imagine walking into a TV meeting with an idea you are sure will be a massive hit, only to have the network bosses look at you like you are crazy. That is exactly what happened when show creator Gary Marshall first tried to get his legendary comedy series on the air. He originally wanted to name the show Cool because he thought it fit the smooth, retro feel of the 1950s. But the network test audiences hated it. Marshall later joked that viewers were totally confused by the name, thinking the show was a strange story about Eskimos who smoked cigarettes. Since the title was a total flop, the team scrambled for a backup name and picked Happy Days, shifting the whole vibe from edgy to safe and cozy. But changing the name was only the first big headache. Recreating the late 1950s on a tight budget turned into an expensive problem. The crew quickly found out that buying the rights to real hit songs from the old days would drain their bank accounts. To keep costs down, they got creative. Anson Williams, who played the lovable Potsy, recorded his own singing voice, and the studio used his tracks as the music playing out of the jukebox at Arnold's Diner, saving the show a fortune. While the music budget was a hassle, it was nothing compared to the network's panic over Fonzie. When Henry Winkler first showed up, ABC bosses were terrified that his character would make kids want to become street criminals. They banned Fonzie from wearing his famous leather jacket, forcing him into a pale gray windbreaker because they thought leather made him look like a dangerous thug. Gary Marshall refused to let the bosses ruin his vision, so he found a clever loophole. He convinced the network that the jacket was simply motorcycle safety gear. ABC bought the excuse, and Marshall immediately made sure a motorcycle appeared with Fonzie whenever possible. Once the Fonz became the most popular character on television, the network gave up and let him wear the leather jacket all the time. Amazingly, the history of TV could have looked completely different because Henry Winkler almost did not get the job. Before the casting team chose him, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees was the top choice to play Fonzie. Winkler later remembered seeing the music star at auditions and assuming his chances were ruined. Instead, he landed the role and turned Fonzie into a global star. That success launched a whole army of spin-offs. Depending on how you count them, Happy Days created between 3 and 8 different series. Massive hits like Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy dominated the ratings, while the franchise also expanded into cartoons and other projects. Rock star Susie Quattro was even offered a spin-off for Leather Tuscadero, but turned it down to focus on her music. The casting for those spin-offs produced one of Hollywood's funniest audition stories. When a young, unknown Robin Williams arrived to audition for Mork the Alien, a producer told him to take a seat. Without missing a beat, Williams flipped himself upside down and sat directly on his head. The producers were so blown away by his energy that they gave him the job on the spot. Even decades after the final episode aired in 1984, the legacy of Happy Days refused to fade away. In 1994, Al Molinaro returned as Al Del Vecchio in Weezer's famous Buddy Holly music video, introducing a whole new generation of fans to Arnold's Drive-In. The show also became a successful stage musical that toured across America before heading to the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, not all the stories had a happy ending. In 2011, Anson Williams, Donnie Most, Aaron Moran, and Marion Ross discovered they were not getting their fair share of money from merchandise, particularly Happy Days casino slot machines. They filed a $10 million lawsuit against CBS and Paramount, but the court ultimately awarded them only $65,000 each. That same year, Fonzie's original 1949 Triumph motorcycle went up for auction. The legendary bike did not even run, and despite expectations that it would sell for a fortune, it failed to receive a successful bid. Yet whether dealing with courtroom battles or broken-down motorcycles, nothing could ruin the magic of what Gary Marshall created. Happy Days remains an immortal, beloved time capsule of television history. But while courtroom battles and broken-down bikes couldn't ruin the magic for fans, The corporate reality behind the scenes became increasingly discouraging for the show's original lead. As Fonzie's pop culture explosion completely blindsided the studio, the clean-cut kid hired to be the face of the series found himself pushed right into the corporate shadows. Keep watching to find out how a total lack of executive respect drove Ron Howard to walk away from acting entirely and rewrite his destiny behind the camera. Beyond the Fonz, the corporate disrespect that pushed Ron Howard to direct. Ron Howard dropped out of film school to take the lead role in Happy Days, fully expecting to be the biggest star on television. He played Richie Cunningham, the clean-cut kid who was supposed to drive the entire story. But Hollywood plans can change fast. Almost overnight, a side character named Fonzie became a massive hit with fans. By the end of the 10-year run, Richie Cunningham was a distant memory, and the leather jacket-clad Fonz was the real star of the show. While this kind of sudden shift usually causes massive backstage fights and crushed egos, the true story of what happened between these two co-stars is one of the most surprising tales in TV history. Years later, Ron Howard opened up about the bad treatment he faced from corporate bosses as the show changed focus. He noticed that network and studio heads began treating him with a total lack of respect from a business standpoint. Whenever the cast went on the road to promote the series, the fan craze was completely focused on Henry Winkler. The final straw came when show creators actually proposed changing the name of the series to Fonzie's Happy Days. Howard knew it was time to walk away, but the situation gave him the push he needed to chase his real dream. He put acting on the back burner and focused on filmmaking, a move that eventually turned him into a legendary director. The most amazing part of the story is that Howard never blamed Henry Winkler for the corporate drama. He understood why Fonzie was a hit, praising Winkler for creating a remarkable character with just a few lines. Instead of letting jealousy ruin their relationship, the two actors became lifelong best friends. Winkler has been just as open about his love for Howard, calling him a brother and admitting he thought his own life was over when Howard left the show. Their bond grew so strong that Winkler and his wife were named the godparents of Howard's children. That close family connection passed right down to the next generation. Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, grew up to become a famous actor and director herself. She has spoken about how lucky she felt to have Winkler as her godfather, though she shared a funny secret on a talk show. She has still never watched a single episode of Happy Days. After leaving the sitcom behind, Ron Howard built a massive career behind the camera. He directed huge movie hits like Splash and Apollo 13, and even won an Academy Award for A Beautiful Mind. Because of the disrespect he felt from network bosses in his youth, Howard made it his mission to create a kind, fair workplace where cast and crew could thrive. He learned firsthand that being good at your job is only half the battle. You also have to be good for the company culture. In the end, real friendship proved to be way more important than Hollywood fame. Just 2 years after leaving the series, Howard cast Winkler in the movie Night Shift. Decades later, in 2008, the duo teamed up again for a presidential campaign ad that fans can still watch on YouTube today. Their 50-year bond proves that even when television executives change their priorities, true loyalty can outlast the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. But long before Ron Howard and Henry Winkler were cementing a lifelong brotherhood, the historic comedy series they starred in almost crashed and burned before it even got off the ground. In fact, on the very night before the cameras were set to roll for the first time, the entire production was struck by an immediate, devastating tragedy. The night that almost ended Happy Days before it began. Happy Days was a gentle, slow, quiet show when it first hit television screens in January 1974. It was filmed with a single camera and had no studio audience, playing out more like a sweet, soft-paced movie about growing up in the 1950s. But behind the scenes, the production was hit with immediate heavy drama before the cameras even rolled. The first assistant director suddenly passed away the night before the very first day of filming. Shaken but determined to make it work, the crew soldiered on, grinding through 18 episodes back-to-back without a single break. During one brutal week, they even had to shoot 2 full episodes in just 5 days, making the early days of the show an absolute nightmare for the exhausted team. The grueling schedule was only the start of their problems, as recreating the 1950s with perfect accuracy turned into a total budget trap. The crew had to source, rent, or completely create every single piece of clothing from scratch. Actress Linda Pearl even went as far as tracking down authentic 1950s undergarments just to keep things real. On top of the clothes, the studio had to rent expensive vintage cars and pay for lessons to teach Henry Winkler how to ride Fonzie's signature motorcycle. In reality, the man playing the coolest biker on Earth was completely terrified of motorcycles. During one chaotic night shoot, Winkler lost control of the bike, crashed, and nearly caused a massive disaster by knocking over a giant production light. After that close call, the crew quickly shifted to using stunt doubles and clever camera tricks to keep their star safe. Despite all their hard work, the show hit a massive wall during its second season. CBS moved its hit comedy Good Times to air at the exact same time as Happy Days, and the ratings crash was devastating. Even though fans were starting to notice Fonzie, the numbers dropped so low that a third season was not guaranteed. Facing total cancellation, creator Gary Marshall decided to use a radical trick he had previously used to save his other show, The Odd Couple. He completely tossed out the single-camera style and switched to a 3-camera setup with a live studio audience. He wanted the actors to feed off the real, raw energy of a crowd, and the gamble worked instantly. Writers and producers Brian Levant and Fred Fox Jr. noticed that having a live audience completely unleashed the actors, making the third season sizzle with an explosive new energy. But this massive spike in popularity created a very awkward situation for the cast. Network boss Fred Silverman saw how much the crowd loved the Fonz and proposed changing the name of the show to Fonzie's Happy Days. This was a heavy blow to Ron Howard, who was the undisputed lead star of the show. Instead of throwing a tantrum, Howard handled the disrespect with total class and professionalism, setting a calm tone for the entire set. But he did push back against the name change, making it clear that he was hired to be the main guy. Surprisingly, Henry Winkler stood right by his side, telling the network bosses that the show only worked because of Fonzie's relationship with the Cunningham family, and that taking him away from them would ruin the magic. Gary Marshall's sister, Barbara, even revealed that Gary himself would have quit the show entirely if the network forced the title change. Instead of separating Fonzie into his own show, Gary Marshall made a genius move to bring him closer to the core story. He had Fonzie move into the empty apartment right above the Cunningham family garage. This simple fix gave the Fonz a permanent, logical seat at the dinner table and a real reason to be involved in their daily lives. The studio audience went absolutely wild for the new dynamic. Lines for show tickets started forming outside the Paramount studio lot as early as 9 in the morning on filming days. The energy in the room was so electric that the actors never wanted to walk away. Happy Days officially skyrocketed to the #1 spot on the television charts, turning the series into a full-blown pop culture phenomenon. The show became such a massive powerhouse that it started launching other hit series right from its own episodes. Midway through that historic third season, The writers introduced two fun characters named Laverne and Shirley, played by Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams. The audience fell in love with them so fast that they were instantly given their own spin-off show. Gary Marshall's instincts proved to be completely flawless yet again. By the fourth and fifth seasons, Laverne and Shirley actually took over the #1 spot on television, while Happy Days sat comfortably right behind it at #2. This legendary mid-show pivot did not just save a failing series from the chopping block. It completely rewrote the rules of television history and created an immortal cultural masterpiece. The 1974 Happy Days episode that sparked a modern controversy. When the very first episode of Happy Days premiered in January 1974, it was supposed to be a harmless, funny story about a teenager trying to get his first kiss. Titled All the Way, the plot follows Richie Cunningham as he tries to ask out his classmate, Mary Lou Milligan. Richie has a massive crush on her, but his friend Potsy warns him that Mary Lou has a very racy reputation and only dates older boys. Desperate to impress her, Richie listens to Potsy's wild dating advice, which includes learning how to undo a girl's bra and practicing on a real brassiere at home. When the big date finally happens, Richie tries his smooth moves on the couch, but Mary Lou stops him immediately, making it clear she does not do things like that. Relieved, Richie stops pushing, and the two happily spend the rest of the night playing chess. But while the episode ended on a wholesome note back in the 1970s, a modern rerun on Canada's CHCH-DT network sparked a massive, real-world controversy. On August 22, 2022, an offended viewer watched the episode during an after-school time slot and sent a lengthy, furious complaint to the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council. The viewer argued that the episode was highly offensive and dangerous for young audiences, claiming it painted women as nothing more than sexual objects. She pointed out that Potsy's advice was completely derogatory, focused purely on tricking a girl into sex. Even worse, the viewer flagged a scene where Mary Lou laughs about her male gym teacher trying to grab her sweater. Richie completely ignores the comment, which the viewer argued normalizes sexual assault against young girls under the excuse that boys will be boys. The complaint did not stop at sexism, as the viewer also flagged a major racial issue at the very end of the episode. In the final scene, Richie and Potsy are talking about a history test question regarding Alaska becoming a state. Richie comments that an Eskimo could become president one day, to which Potsy jokes that the president could throw out the first snowball at the World Series. The angry viewer claimed this dialogue was an extremely racist attack against indigenous communities. She slammed the TV station for failing to air a warning at the beginning of the show, arguing that vintage programs should not get a free pass to broadcast harmful stereotypes just because they are old. The television station quickly tried to smooth things over by sending an official apology to the viewer. The station managers admitted that older shows are a reflection of the times they were made, and they accepted the fact that the episode contained inappropriate situations. To fix the problem, they promised to air a viewer discretion statement before any future broadcasts of that specific episode. But the viewer refused to back down. She demanded that the first episode of Happy Days be banned from television completely, stating that it was wrong back then and is still wrong today. She also pointed out the hypocrisy of television stations being quick to put warnings on racial stereotypes while completely ignoring blatant sexism. To settle the battle, the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council pulled out their official broadcast codes and put the episode under a microscope. They studied the show under strict human rights clauses regarding stereotyping, exploitation, and violence against women. After a deep investigation, the council finally dropped its hammer and ruled that the complaint was invalid. They openly agreed that the episode contained undeniable sexism, but they ruled that it did not cross the line into breaching actual broadcasting laws. The council also tackled the controversial Eskimo comment by doing a bit of deep research into history and language. They explained that while the word is completely outdated today, the characters in the show were actually making a joke about the freezing cold temperatures in Alaska, rather than attacking an indigenous group of people. They also noted that linguists still use the term today to describe specific language families. In their final decision, the council admitted that society's standards are always evolving, making it highly difficult for old shows to live up to modern expectations. Ultimately, the battle over the very first episode of Happy Days shows how much our language and cultural views have changed, turning a once-beloved comedy into a complicated history lesson on our television screens. But while critics can debate the evolving standards of old episodes under a microscope, pop culture history insists that the show's biggest downfall came from a completely different kind of disaster. For decades, a legendary rumor claimed that a single absurd stunt involving a leather jacket, water skis, and a live predator instantly destroyed the sitcom's massive empire. Keep watching to find out the real truth behind the night Happy Days supposedly jumped the shark, and whether that infamous moment actually killed the show. The myth of jumping the shark. Did it actually kill Happy Days? Arthur the Fonz. Fonzarelli strapped on a pair of water skis, zipped up his leather jacket, and soared over a live shark in the 1977 episode Hollywood Part 3. For decades, millions of television fans pointed to this exact absurd stunt as the single, spectacular disaster that completely killed Happy Days and took it off the air. The scene was so wildly out of place that it birthed the famous phrase, "jumping the shark," a term pop culture still uses today to describe the moment a great show loses its cool and starts its terminal downhill slide. People genuinely believed that viewers were so alienated by the ridiculousness of the stunt that they packed up and abandoned the sitcom empire for good. But behind that massive television myth lies a completely different reality. The episode itself was actually a huge ratings hit when it premiered, and there was barely any negative chatter about the shark scene at the time. In fact, the writers only cooked up the stunt as a fun way for Henry Winkler to show off his real-life water skiing skills, since he used to be an instructor. Winkler was never embarrassed by the moment, even joking years later that he loved when people shared the photo because his legs looked great. The show did not get canceled right after the jump either. It survived for another 6 seasons, produced 255 total episodes, and kept launching hit spin-offs like Mork and Mindy and Joni Loves Chachi. The real curse of the shark did not destroy the show overnight, but it did signal a slow, painful decline as the series marched into the 1980s. The squeaky clean, nostalgic 1950s vibe simply could not compete with the major cultural changes of a new decade. The true downward spiral started when core stars like Ron Howard's Richie Cunningham and Don Most's Ralph Malph left the show after the 7th season. To make matters worse, the writing became weak and mediocre. Fans grew tired of watching the Fonz lose his cool, dangerous edge as the scripts made him too warm and fuzzy, focusing on stories where he graduated school, ran a business, and became a soft-hearted family man. Because of these weak storylines and missing characters, the ratings completely tanked. After sitting comfortably in the top 5 most-watched shows for years, Happy Days dropped out of the top 20 by 1982. By its final season, it plummeted to a dismal number 63 on the charts, and the network knew the magic was officially dead. To say goodbye, the studio created an emotional 2-part finale called Passages. The story wrapped things up by having Joni and Chachi get married, while Fonzie tried to adopt a young orphan named Danny. During the final moments, The family patriarch, Howard Cunningham, did something completely unexpected. He turned directly to the camera, broke the fourth wall, and made a heartfelt toast to the viewers, saying, "Thank you all for being part of our family. To happy days." The network bosses threw a massive fit over the scene, but actor Tom Bosley fought hard to keep it in, believing the audience deserved that special moment. In a bizarre final twist, that beautiful goodbye did not even end up being the last episode to air. Because the 1984 Winter Olympics completely messed up the network's schedule, Happy Days was bumped from its time slot for weeks. Instead of delaying the big finale, the network aired the wedding episode as planned, and then broadcast 4 leftover missing episodes as bonus tracks in the weeks that followed. It was a chaotic and messy end for a legendary show. But no matter how many years it survived, or how many bonus episodes aired, the image of Fonzie flying over that shark tank remains the ultimate controversial symbol of the show's downfall. What Happy Days scene is your favorite to this very day? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.